What's up YouTube, Capital G here. So we're asking the question in this video, should Konami have used the ban list essentially to nuke the competitive meta? Should they have just went through and said, you know what, if you're tier 1, we're just taking you out, or we're seriously going to bring you down a peg so that, some of the other decks can compete and so that we can kind of get like a fresh new meta. You know what I mean? Make the players kind of figure out what they want to play and not have decks already defaultly good that that they're just going to essentially, leapfrog to. And we know that that's essentially what they did in the OCG. I'm wondering if they should have just mimicked what happened in the OCG. And Konami has done this in the past. When the Dragon Rulers got banned in the OCG, what happened? Konami just pretty much copied what they did in the OCG, and surprise, surprise, they end up getting hit. Same thing with a card like Reasoning that got hit in the OCG and then randomly gets hit in the TCG, despite the fact that Infernoids aren't really doing much. If you looked at the OCG ban list, and I'm sure that most of you guys are aware of it, whether you saw it on this channel or another channel or a website or whatever, essentially Konami went through unilaterally, and if you were tier 1, you got taken down a effing peg. And they did, like, it was with extreme prejudice. I mean, obviously they wrecked Draco Pals because Monkey Board ain't a thing anymore, and they went after Draco Face Off, so that deck obviously took a hit. They hit Wavering Eyes as well in the OCG, so obviously Draco Face, or the Draco Pals deck got they got kind of roughed up. But then they went after Monarchs, they went after Burning Abyss they went after Burning Abyss hard in the paint. I'm talking, they went after Burning Abyss. The 2 hits that Konami has done in the TCG, because Burning Abyss has been hit twice essentially, once with Tour Guide and then the second time with Seer and Graph. But the one hits that they did in the one batch of hits that they did in the OCG, in my opinion, like, did way more damage to the deck, because Dante is at 1 and with Dante at 1, those fields that used to always see, double Dante turn 1, especially during Doris Alliance days when Tour Guide was at 3, you will never see those again in the OCG, like, just never, because you only got one Dante to work with. They went after Monarchs hard with Pantheism and Domain going to 1, and I've been on the record before, not only is Domain probably the best draw card in the last 10 years outside of maybe Chicken Game, I don't think Avarice is in that. Avarice was what, Flaming Eternity or some shit like that? I feel like Avarice was over 10 years ago. I could be wrong about that. But I've also said, like, if Pantheism with the 1, no dice. I'm checking out on Monarchs. Not saying that it shouldn't go to 1. This card is definitely limit worthy because look at the card design. So if they would have went after essentially all the tier 1 decks, I felt like they could have done a lot of good with the format, because the thing about it is, okay, yeah, they took out Draco Pals, but I feel like last format we were in pretty much a 4 deck format anyways, where when you looked at the regional circuit, like 90%, or not, actually let's go higher, like 99% of what you saw topping was 4 decks. It was either Monarchs, Draco Pals, Cosmos, or Burning Abyss / PK Fire Phantom Knight, some type of combo with that deck, with those 2 archetypes or whatever. Like, those were pretty much the big 4, and they were considered the tier 1, and they were what was essentially just, all of the competitive meta. And it's like, okay, you went after one deck, you hit, Wavering Eyes just out of the game, you hit Draco Face Off, so clearly Draco Pals is not going to be the best deck anymore. But doesn't that, maybe we can even go as far as say Draco Pals won't even be a thing anymore, because, Upstart going to 1 definitely hurts that deck a lot too. But wouldn't players just default back to the other 3? Because the other 3 decks, Monarchs, Cosmo, and Burning Abyss, they didn't get touched at all. And don't tell me that E-Telly going to 2 was a real hit to Cosmos. If they would have done something like E-Telly to 1, and then I heard, Spoopy from the Card Guys, he was like, Call to Haunted would be a nice hit to Cosmos. I kind of agree. I don't think it was realistic to expect, like, Dart Destroyer or anything actually in Cosmos to get hit like Tin Can. If they would have went after 2 indirect hits, like, E-Telly to 1, and Call to Haunted to 1, I'd have been like, okay, that's enough indirect hits to hurt the consistency of the deck. You don't always get your Tin Can turn 1 into your Call to Haunted, Dart Destroyer, etc., etc. I'm fine with that. But if they would have done that, then I think they would have done a lot more good for the game, because you wouldn't see people just, kind of like, oh, well, we're still just going to see the same exact decks. I saw Team APS, Paul, he did a video at YCS Houston, and a lot of people said that. They were like, well, the 3 decks that were pretty much tier 1 last format, nothing really changed, so they'll pretty much, like, most of the players will just, hop from Performa Pals or Draco Pals to those other decks, and nothing will stay the same. I don't like the idea of a Draco Pal player essentially playing Draco Pal's all last format, or post adjusted list or whatever, and then just looking at a Monarch deck from 2 weeks ago and saying, all right, I guess I'll just play that. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just play that until nationals. It takes away deck building and stuff like that. And granted, Konami will release future archetypes, and there are other like tier 2 archetypes in the game, but come on, aren't we all in agreement that a lot of those really cool archetypes that have been released in the last few sets, like Buster Blader and Blackluster Soldier, I'm talking about the ritual version that came out, and like all the support that came out in Doc's Dynamis and stuff, they're good, but they're clearly they're never going to get there. They're never going to see a lot of competitive play, as far as decks like Burning Abyss and Monarchs and Cosmos are just kind of drowning them out because they're much more superior. You know what I mean? I think that if Konami would have just went through and kind of just wiped away the tier 1, not made the decks unplayable. Monarchs are still playable with one Pantheism and one Domain. You just have to be smart, especially considering you can recycle them with Edia anyways. You know what I mean? You just have to be a little more savvy. Burning Abyss could still easily be playable with one copy of Dante. You just actually have to summon some of those other rank 3 Xyzs that you never fucking go into anyways. Cosmos with one copy of Teleport and one copy of Call to Haunted would still be very, very playable, but then you might actually see people play some other decks. Like, I remember, back in like the 5Ds era, one of the funnest, or one of the best things about that era was, like after they hit Teledad, Teledad was basically just drowning out every other deck of the format. Lightsworn saw a little bit of shine, but for the most part, Teledad was just drowning out everything. That shit was tier 0, inarguable, just like Gladiator Beast before it. But when Teledad got nuked by the ban list, it was kind of like, not only thank God, we don't have to just play Teledad now, but it was kind of like for the first couple of regionals, the first month or so, it was fun because nobody knew what the hell to play. Everybody was like, well, shit. It wasn't this whole de facto, oh, okay, well, we'll all just play Lightsworn. Like, no, that definitely wasn't it. I feel like right now, everybody just says, okay, well, we'll just play Burning Abyss, we'll play Monarchs, or we'll play Cosmo, because those decks didn't get touched, and they were obviously tier 1. But during that era, nobody was like, all right, well, let's all play Lightsworn. It was, some people were playing Lightsworn, some people were playing Gladiator Beast. Crimson Crisis was coming out at that time, which is the set that released, the Blackwing. So and Black Salvo. You saw Salvo Dad. You saw, I think there was a Blackwing version that ran Salvo that actually got top 4 at a Shonen Jump. Hell, I got not top 8. I got 9th place with a Blackwing deck that ran Salvo and no Whirlwinds, and it was crazy. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. And I mean, even the first Shonen Jump after Teledad got hit, the deck that won it was a Jeff Jones variant where he was running like Skill Drains and Beast King Barbaros and like Destiny Hero Defender and all this other random crazy shit. It was like no one really knew what the meta was, and there was this crazy aspect of deck building, and it felt like you could kind of play everything. Even if it was just an illusion, it was nice to kind of have that freshness in the game, and it feels like we don't have that right now. If Konami would have nuked the tier 1, it felt like we would have had at least some aspect of that, even though Yu-Gi-Oh is more of an archetype based game now than ever. If you look at the OCG, you see exactly what I'm talking about. They went through, they nuked the entire tier 1, and you see people in the OCG playing Cleaford and Blue Eyes and all this other random shit. Like, what is this? But it's a nice element to have in the game. It's nice when you don't know what to play, when you don't know, you show up to regionals and it's not like, okay, I know I gotta play these 3 decks. I mean, you imagine if they basically just, said, all right, we're gonna wreck you, and we're gonna wreck Cosmos. You show up to the regionals and you might play Buster Blader round 1, and then you might play PK Fire round 2, and then some other crazy deck like Psyframes in round 3, because people feel more confident playing these decks that they can actually have a little room to breathe. They don't know that, they know that they're not automatically going to be drowned out by, okay, well, my deck will never be as consistent as Burning Abyss, so why not play Burning Abyss? Or, all right, well, Buster Blader's cool, but if I get turn 1 Domain, GG no read, because I can't play Yu-Gi-Oh now. I just feel like that would have been a little bit of fresh air into the game, into the format. And I think that that's something Konami should definitely consider doing in the next ban list. I mean, look at a deck like Burning Abyss. This shit has been it has been tier 1 since it released in Duos Alliance. That's August 2014. It's April of 2016. Come on, guys. That's a year and a half at tier 1 status. Burning Abyss has never dropped below tier 1. Not for a second. why is this deck not essentially been annihilated yet? You know, but decks like Insectors and Windups, they fucking got annihilated to the point where they're just absolutely, you build the best version on earth and it's just like it's not even remotely competitive. You know what I mean? Because these new decks are just so much better. So let me know what you guys think. I just thought that this was something interesting to talk about, and I personally wish that they would have done it. Like, don't get me wrong, I've got Monarchs and everything, but I would have been much more fine, even if Konami didn't bring back all the great stuff that we wanted, if they just would have kind of overhauled the entire, like, what was perceived to be the meta, so that people just didn't default back to these 3 decks. Because, I mean, who knows, I've been fucking around with, like, Buster Blade or this format or something like that. You know, that would have been kind of fun. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, as always.